Good afternoon, Year 11 students and Year 11 parents, and welcome to Year 11 Exams Information Evening 2022. And I guess the big news at the moment is that GCSE exams this summer are currently definitely going ahead, and the plan is that students will sit the full suite of exams as they would have done in previous years. Now, you'll note from my message last week that we did delay this evening by 1 week, just to make sure that we had all of the information on those upcoming exams and potential changes that were afoot. And we got a lot of information on the 7th of February, so Monday of this week, which they were calling advance information, which has given us some additional guidance in lots of subject areas about topics which are going to come up on each exam. Perhaps the removal of some units of study from the syllabus, which we were sort of aware of already, but have now been confirmed. And I know heads of department are working through all of that guidance at the moment, and we'll be sharing that with students over the coming days. I think the important thing is there that we have been given a little bit more guidance than we would in a normal year about what topics will come up, what potential topics might come up in each element of the exam, and definite confirmation that there is a removal of some units of study. There's also been talk about what they're calling a grading safety net, which is for the pandemic recovery period. So the last set of formal exams with formal GCSE grades was 2019. And what they have said is that because grades have gone up over the last 2 years, in 2021 and 2020, why we've been doing teacher assessed grades, that this year's grade boundaries are going to fall somewhere between what was in place in 2019 and what was in place last year in 2021, just to take into account that students have lost time studying and have lost time in school over the last couple of years. So we're not sure exactly how that's going to look, but that's the information we've been given so far. Hopefully you've already seen the GCSE exam timetable as of the beginning of January, which we do have on our school website. So that's in general information, exams, and then hyperlink through, as you can see on the screen. In terms of that GCSE exam timetable, it is broadly similar in structure to that of previous years and a normal exam year. The one thing they have changed slightly is the structure of when certain exams take place. And what they've done is they've tried to mitigate around students potentially having to do COVID isolation during the exam period. So for example, in maths, they will sit 3 papers. Those maths papers are spread out on the 20th of May, 7th of June, and 13th of June. And they're spread out like in that way because the thinking is that if a student had COVID at a point during the GCSE exams, they may miss one of the papers, but they'd definitely be able to sit the other 2. And you'd see a similar thing in English and English literature, where they're spread out so that students will, even if they were to miss one exam because of a COVID isolation, they'll definitely sit part of the qualification. So I'll talk a little bit more later on about the COVID isolation, but the exams have been structured in a way to try and mitigate so that everybody will do at least one of the exams or 2 of the exams in each subject area. You'll see there that the first written exam is Monday, the 16th of May, which is actually only 10 school weeks from today. So it really is coming round very, very quickly. The final thing I wanted to note on the GCSE exams timetable is Wednesday, the 29th of June, which is contingency exams day. Now, this is in place every year, and I always flag this up because I know that some parents perhaps like to take students on holiday as soon as they finish their GCSEs. So it's important that we have this date in our diary. Now, for National Exams Contingency Day, all students do need to be available if required, because this is a day that can be used if there is any national disruption that meant an exam was cancelled or there was a problem during the exam series. So it's really important that even if your son or daughter finishes their scheduled exams perhaps on the 15th of June, that they are still available on Wednesday the 29th, just in case there is any emergency that requires them to come in and sit an additional exam on this day. And given the uncertainty we've faced over the last 2 years, I think that would be particularly relevant for this year, just to make sure that we are definitely available for that. Another date for your diary is GCSE Results Day, which will take place this year on Thursday, the 25th of August. We will open up school that day between either 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. to 11 or 11:30, and students can then come in and collect their own results. It's really important that students actually come in themselves to collect those results, or we need written permission in advance for a parent, carer, or other adult to collect them for them. The results technically are the students, they are their property, and we are not allowed to give them out to anybody else without written prior permission. If your son or daughter or your whole family are away on holiday at the time, we are able to email results out to you, again, with prior written permission given. So please just contact our exam office, and I'll share that email later on in the presentation with you. And then you can email us in advance, and we will get those sent out to you during GCSE results day. In terms of preparing for exams, there is a lot of information on our school website. So again, going through the drop-down menu, general information to exams, you will see there are a number of linked documents on there to help you, to help your son or daughter in preparing for those exams. So there's lots of quick links to revision techniques and guidance for taking exams. There's also links to remaining emotionally healthy during those exams and looking after your own mental well-being. And in addition to that, there's lots of formal information about JCQ guidelines regarding written exams, coursework, and all of those other components that you can see on the screen. So if there's any information that you feel you don't have and you'd like to look up, then please go through the school website, and it is all on there for you. Hopefully a document you've already seen over the last couple of weeks is your son or daughter's statement of entry, which looks a little bit like the one on the screen here. The deadline for this being returned into school was the 7th of February. I've checked this morning, and we are currently outstanding about 30 of those from pupils, which we do need to chase up over the coming days. It's really important that this document is checked thoroughly to make sure there's no mistakes. So check thoroughly to check that your son or daughter is entered in all the exams you're expecting them to be entered, but also just to check things like correct spelling of name, date of birth, all of those personal details, because what we confirm on this document will then be the details that go onto the GCSE certificates when they're awarded later on in the year. As I've already said, there is a section on here for you to sign and for the student to sign. So if you haven't seen this document and you haven't signed it, please chase up your son or daughter, because like I say, we are missing about 30 at the moment, which we'll be chasing up in school over the coming days. An additional document your son or daughter will be receiving next week prior to half term is the first version of their personalised exam timetable. Again, this will detail all of the different exams and components that they'll take, that they will sit an exam for, and it will give the date and the start time. Okay, so again, it's worth checking through, checking when all the different exams are, checking that your son or daughter has been entered for all of the exams they're expecting to be entered for, and then starting to map out when those exams are going to take place, because that's our starting point for starting to then plan our revision back from here. Then prior to Easter, they will receive one more final copy, which looks like this one on the screen. This gives all of the final details. It confirms start times. Some of those may change from the first copy, because all of the start times on the first copy would be 9 o'clock or 1:30. Some of them might vary slightly if we had any clashed exams. So again, it's got the date, the time, the board and the component that we studied. And then the additional information on the far right-hand side is really important, because it will say the venue, which in lots of cases will be the sports hall or the main hall, although for some smaller exams, we do use other rooms around the school, and also the seat number. It's really important that your son or daughter arrives to their exam knowing their seat number and knowing their venue, so there's no disruption at the start of the exam. And the last thing they want to be doing is stressing because they've turned up at the wrong venue or they don't know their seat number when they've got an important exam coming up, which should be all of their focus going into that. One thing we often get asked by Year 11 students and parents is what we do in regard to study leave. And really at Priestons, we don't have study leave as such. We do expect all students to attend every single timetable lesson up until May half term. So that even includes lessons where they're not going to be sitting in exams, such as core PE and life skills. We do expect them in every single lesson. After half term, we have about 2 weeks then in June where students sit their remaining exams. We expect them to be in school in timetabled lessons in the subject until they have sat their final exam. So say, for example, in science, if their final exam is on the 16th of June, we expect them in all of their science lessons up to the 16th of June. But for example, if they were sitting French and they'd already finished all of their French exams by that date, they would not need to continue coming to their French lesson. Now, obviously, we accept that coming and going from school isn't straightforward for every student, and there might be transport arrangements. So students can still stay in school throughout the school day. We will have study rooms assigned, but the timetable classes will only be going on for those subjects where they still need to sit the exam. Normal transport arrangements for year 11s will continue if they get the school bus into school at the start and at the end of the day. I've already touched on it briefly, but I think particularly this year with COVID around, it is important to look at illness or injury during the exam period. Now, if for any reason you feel that your son or daughter is going to be absent from a GCSE exam, it's absolutely vital that you make contact with me in school as soon as possible. So our school switchboard's open just after 8, or I am going to share my email address with you at the end of this presentation. So please contact us immediately if you have any concerns. Under certain circumstances, we can make special arrangements. And under certain circumstances as well, we can put in for special consideration from the exam board. But it's really important that you speak to me about that before your son or daughter misses an exam, because what we don't want them to do is to miss an exam, which then has a negative impact on their grade moving forwards. As I've already said, in terms of COVID, there has been mitigation put into the structure of the exam timetable so that COVID doesn't wipe out a whole set of exams for students. But again, it's just constant liaison with us in school so that we can make decisions. In the past, we have had students come in and sit exams when they may have come in a little bit late, or they may be in a separate room. If they're not feeling particularly well, they can have rest breaks, but we need to have that discussion at the earliest opportunity so we can decide the best course of action for the student in terms of being successful with their exams. Now, as we work towards the exams in the summer, subjects will be putting on different intervention at different stages to support students in accessing the grade that they're working towards. All of these intervention sessions are again listed on our school website, and this document will be updated regularly. And they will all be in the Year 11 page, which I've got on the screen here of the website. And you can see there it's hyperlinked again through to a document which looks like this. And this document will detail all of the sessions that are taking place. And in lots of cases, we try to be really specific about what they'll be looking at in each of those sessions. So you can see there for English, it's very, very specific. They might be looking at English language paper 1, question 4. So they're really focusing in on areas of weakness. And it may well be that your son or daughter decides they need to go to some of those sessions, but not all of those sessions. Or for other subjects, it may be that they're catching up on coursework or doing something very specific. So this will be shared on the school website. This is it as it currently stands. However, this document will change over time as different sessions are added and different needs arise. And also this will be publicised through subject teams and in lessons. And some students will receive specific invites to certain sessions because their teacher feels that that would benefit them and support them. So again, that's there for you for your reference in terms of you supporting your son or daughter through the process. In terms of other support, which we have run historically in normal exam years, but obviously we haven't done over the last couple of years, we've got 2 main strategies we run during the GCSE exam period, which have proved to be highly successful, but also highly valued by students who've gone through. Whenever I speak to students at the end, they've always talked about exam breakfast and walking, talking mocks. So for every 9 AM exam throughout the exam period, we will run an exam breakfast at 8:15 or from 8:15 onwards. Students are welcome to arrive earlier should they wish. In these exam sessions, we gather all the students in the canteen together. We have subject staff on hand to support students with questions, support students with any queries they've got. And sometimes it's just a case of getting them settled, getting them together as a group and getting them mentally prepared to go into that exam hall. We provide those last minute activities. We also provide food and drinks for students to get them ready for that exam. And the idea is that we keep them in there until the last moment, then we send them through to the sports hall, and we hope we send them through in the right frame of mind, nice and calm and ready to be really successful in those exams. Again, like I said, students have really valued this in the past, and I hope your son or daughter will take advantage of it when we get to that exam season. The second thing we run during the exam season is something we call walking, talking mocks. And what we do here is we gather students for some, essentially what is last minute revision in the exam hall. So we get them sat at the exam desk. And what we do on the large screens is we model how to answer an exam paper or how to answer sections of an exam paper. So students have the opportunity to do some exam practice, but it is completely guided by subject staff. And what this has been really beneficial in doing is it gets students into that exam environment. It gets them thinking specifically about what that exam is going to look like and how they are going to approach each of those questions. And like I say, then subject specialists are going to model how to go about answering those questions. And we found that doing this in the couple of days prior to an exam is hugely beneficial. And it's actually really good in terms of reducing nervousness and getting everybody settled for those exams. So a full program of walking, talking mocks will be published just after Easter for students. And we would encourage really good participation at that. And you can see from the picture there, we've had evenings in the sports hall before where we've had over 200 students sat there at the end of the school day till 4 o'clock or 4:15. And again, they've come out of those and said that it was a really, really helpful session in terms of that last minute preparation for their exams. So moving on to revision, and hopefully your son or daughter already has a revision program in place that they've successfully used in their mock exams, and it's ongoing now, and you're seeing signs of that on a constant basis. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go through some of my general top tips, which I think are really useful things for you to support your son or daughter in doing in order for them to be successful with their revision. Obviously, the specifics will come from each subject area. And number one there is making sure it's active revision. I think we've seen over a long period that simply reading through work is a very poor way of remembering it. And I think you can sometimes spend hours reading things or reading a revision guide, thinking you're revising, but actually not a lot of it goes in. So we work with the students a lot on self-testing, on drawing up different revision notes and testing themselves and making it very, very active so they're not just sat there reading. So again, if your son or daughter is saying to you, I'm revising and just sat there in front of a revision guide, just reading it for hours and hours, might just be worth prompting them to think about how are they testing themselves, how are they making sure it's an active revision session. The second thing I always say to students is try to find, and I know this is sometimes difficult, a nice, quiet, well-lit area to revise. I think sometimes sort of sitting on the bed or maybe on the sofa in front of the TV isn't the best revision environment for really focusing and getting some good quality study done. So trying to find a quiet, well-lit area, if that's possible in your house, that would be really beneficial for students. The next one is a bit of a challenge, but again, I think it's absolutely critical, is trying to remove all distractions. I think we know that in our lives now and in young people's lives, the mobile phone is the biggest distraction they have. And I have no doubt that if the mobile phone is sat there on the desk next to them when they're trying to revise and it keeps going off and they keep getting alerts or messages from friends, it's going to be very difficult not to pick it up, to get engaged in that conversation and then to switch off from the revision. So what we recommend is that while students are revising, they try and be really disciplined, perhaps leave their phone downstairs if they're going upstairs to revise, or put their phone somewhere else so that it's not a distraction for them, so they can really focus in on the revision they're doing. Again, like I've said, I appreciate that one's easier said than done, and will involve some discussion with your son or daughter. In terms of lessons, the message is really clear to students. Use their lesson time wisely. Their teachers are their most valuable resource. The teachers know what is needed to get students through their GCSEs. They know what is needed to be successful on those different elements of the paper. So 3 really simple rules: arrive to lessons on time, arrive with the correct equipment, and arrive with the right attitude. And really maximize every moment they have with their teacher. Every single lesson now is critical in terms of getting them ready for those exams. And the other thing I said there is attendance, making sure they attend all lessons in the build up to and throughout the exam period is giving them every chance of being successful in those GCSE exams. When students are revising, we always encourage them to set achievable goals, break things down into small parts. The GCSE syllabus for lots of subjects is vast, it's huge, and it can be quite daunting to sit down and revise a whole area such as science or maths because it's so vast. So they need to focus in on very, very small parts and set achievable goals for each revision session. The example there I've given is from my subject of PE. I'm trying to break it down to 25 minutes of work and saying by the end of this 25 minutes, I'm going to know these key bits of information so that then they can be really successful in that. They can almost tick that off and say, yeah, that was a really good revision session. I've now got that covered. I feel confident in that area, and they can move on to the next bit. In order to do this successfully, revision needs to start now. If it's being done at the last minute, like I said, the syllabuses are so vast, it can be quite daunting for students to know where to start and what to do first. We talk to students about something called the Pomodoro technique. And essentially this is trying to make sure that we are really efficient with how we structure our revision sessions. And what has been proven is that if you just revise for a block of 2 hours, you can see there that the learning efficiency goes down until right at the end there, where we get a little peak. So if they are going, if your son or daughter is planning to do a 2-hour revision session, they are far better to break it down into small chunks, say 25 minutes, with a very clear end time. So they know they're going to do 25 minutes and then they're going to have a 5-minute break. And then they're going to do the same again. And you can see there that each time there's that planned break, we get that little spike in learning efficiency. And that's far more effective. It'd be far more effective to do that for an hour or 2 hours than to perhaps do 3 hours straight through, where their mind's going to tail off and that revision is actually going to be ineffective. And it's an ineffective use of time. Thinking about the actual exam period itself, and then thinking about diet. I think sometimes when students come into school in the morning, they might be tired, they might be a little bit lethargic, they might naturally crave sort of those sugary drinks, energy drinks, sugary foods that are going to give them that instant hit of energy. But actually, it's been proven time and time again that actually, in terms of preparing for an exam and sitting an exam, that's actually a really poor way of approaching it. And what you can see there is that they might get that blood glucose spike over a short period of time. They get that sugar rush, but it can also fade off very quickly. So if they're sitting a 2-hour English exam, what they want is that slow release of energy over a period of time that they're going to get from complex carbohydrates. So encouraging the right diet, the right breakfast, the right lunch in the build up to the exams is going to be really, really important. And the other thing is getting a balance. I think maintaining physical and mental well-being throughout the exam period is really, really critical. And I think I would encourage your son or daughter, if you're maybe worried they're spending too much time revising and getting really bogged down with it and stressed with it, encouraging some free time, some exercise, some fresh air throughout that period is absolutely critical. And we would advocate for that completely, that there's got to be a balance. And as much as we want students to work hard, we want them to remain healthy and not to burn out through that exam period. And that moves us on to sleep hygiene. We talk to students a lot about mobile phones and screens before bedtime. I think lots of students will struggle perhaps during the exam period with nerves, and sometimes when we're nervous and we're struggling to sleep, and there might be a temptation to stay up really late revising or to stay up late on their phones because they can't get to sleep and they're nervous. And actually that's going to be really detrimental towards exam performance. So trying to maintain a normal routine throughout the exam period is really, really important. And I touched on earlier about trying to avoid studying on their bed or spending lots of time on their bed. It's really important that we associate our bed with going to sleep, because that's going to aid our sleep rather than doing, if we're revising on our bed, then we try to go to bed. That can sometimes be difficult to get ourselves to sleep. We advise all students have a plan, have a revision timetable. I spoke already about looking at when those exam dates are and then mapping back. How much time have I got between biology, paper 1, and how many weeks have I got to build up, and how many topics do I need to cover in that time, and mapping that back over a course of weeks. And These revision timetables, we've got a few templates on our school website, and I'll show you the links to those in just a moment, are a really good way of de-stressing, of breaking everything down into small chunks. Within lessons, teachers will have given students feedback on their mock exams. They'd have talked about strengths and weaknesses and areas that they need to focus on, so they can now be the priority in terms of revision. And having a weekly planner or a monthly planner, just so they're ticking things off as they go, can be really, really beneficial. It can also be really beneficial for you as parents. Perhaps ask your son or daughter for a copy of their exam times, and perhaps sit down with them and work it out together. And then as things get ticked off, perhaps eases your stress and maybe eases some conflict at home, because you'll know they're studying, you know they're ticking things off as they're going, and you know some progress is being made towards that revision and towards those exams. As I already said, we have a number of templates on our school website. If you link through from the exams page to that advice on revision techniques, and then there's a whole link there to different templates that students can use in terms of mapping out that revision for them. In addition, what we've tried to do is summarize all of the sort of key tips from tonight's presentation, but also some of the key tips in terms of revision techniques, in terms of planning a study timetable, in terms of that final preparation night before and on the morning of the exam. We've included into this A5 handbook, which are being issued to students this week. There are sections in there which I touch on in this presentation, but there's sections in there for parents about how you can support, and lots of little tips and guides, which hopefully by putting them all into one place would help students in terms of preparing. I wouldn't advise they sit and read the whole booklet in one go, but it might be something they dip into over time, just to get some guidance, perhaps when they're unsure about what they can be doing to prepare thoroughly for those exams. So please ask your son or daughter for those and have a look through and read through it with them. In that, we have some top tips, and these are some top tips for parents. And I'm not going to read all of these out, and some of these things may seem very, very obvious, but I think it's just some things that you can do. I know you'll all be keen to help, and sometimes the students can be quite reluctant to accept that help, and they might push you away a little bit. So just by looking through it, there's just some little things that you can do which are just going to help ease their stress, and also making sure you're involved in the process and you're supporting, even if it is maybe from a slight distance, if your son or daughter doesn't want you too involved in the process. So as I've said, I'm not going to read through all of those, but please feel free to look through them. They are in the booklet and they will help. In terms of the day before the exam, you can help here by doing a couple of things and supporting your son or daughter with that. Firstly, please support them in the build up to the exam to make sure they've got all of the equipment they need. Make sure they've got lots of black pens. It must be black pens for all exams. Make sure they've got all of their maths equipment, their ruler, their protractor, their compass, their pencil. Make sure they have a correct scientific calculator for those maths exams, and making sure they've got everything ready the day before the exam. Just making sure they know the exam start time, the venue, the seat number. I have had situations before where I've had to ring up parents and remind them that their son should be in an exam, and they've had to hurriedly bring him in because he got the time wrong and he didn't think he was coming into school until the afternoon. In terms of revision, I think the night before should be light revision. It should be going over existing revision notes, revision cards, mind maps. We shouldn't really be doing totally new revision that night before. The hard work should have been done by here, and it should just be touching on some of the key things that students want to go over the night before, and they need to try and get a normal night's sleep. And I've already spoke about that. That's easier said than done sometimes with nerves, but it's really important to try and get a full night's sleep. Be available to talk to your son or daughter if they want to discuss the exam, but also be prepared that they might not want to talk about it and they might just want to be left alone. And we have to bear this in mind in school, and it is sometimes tricky. Try to avoid any potentially stressful confrontations just before the exam or the night before the exam. We have to sometimes do it when students might not get something quite right in school. We have to take a step back because we want them to be fully prepared for that exam. In terms of on the day, make sure they get to school with plenty of time, so no rushing in last minute to make it. As I've already said, make sure they have a good breakfast, ideally some complex carbohydrates and proteins. Avoiding sugary drinks and foods I've already spoke about. and do that last minute equipment check just to make sure they've got everything they need. And obviously we then will run the exam breakfast at 8:15 and get them fully ready and calm before they go into that exam. So finally from me, firstly, thank you for spending the time this evening. There are going to be 3 further short presentations from Dr. Burgess, Mrs. Russell and Dr. Taylor regarding specifics around maths, English and science. So please don't switch off as soon as I finish talking. It will lead into their presentations in just a moment. But I just wanted to pause on this screen in terms of some key contacts. For those who don't know me, my name is Tom Ritchie. I'm assistant head teacher and I lead on the GCSE exams. And I've included my email address there. So if you've got any concerns either in the build up to or during that exam period, please feel free to email me. And like I said, if there's any chance that your son or daughter may miss an exam due to illness, please get in touch with me as soon as possible so I can support with that. I've also included our exam office email there. So if there's any queries regarding exam timetables, or if that needs to be reissued, or if your son or daughter wants GCSE results emailed to them on results day, please use that email address there. And finally, there's Mr. Kaplan's email address there, who's head of Year 11, who can support with any other inquiries. So thank you for your time this evening. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have during the process. And like I say, I'm going to hand over now to English, Maths and Science to provide you with some further details.
Hi there, my name's Amy Russell. I'm head of English here at Priestlands, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the English and English literature GCSEs that our students are studying at the moment. So first of all, it's important for you to recognise that the students will receive 2 separate GCSE qualifications from their studies, one in English language, one in English literature. As you can see, between those 2 qualifications, students will sit 4 examinations in total. So first of all, the English paper 1, which will take place on Wednesday, the 18th of May. This is the paper in which students are presented with a fiction text in section A, and they will answer 4 questions on that fiction text. It's not a text they've seen before, but regardless of the actual text itself, what is being examined really here is the skills that they can apply in terms of their comprehension of the text that they're presented with. And then in section B, they will be given a writing task, which is worth 40 marks, which is 50% of the paper in total. And that will be to write a description, usually based on an image, or to write a story based on a given title or an opening line or a particular theme. Then in paper 2, which will take place on Friday the 10th of June, students are given another paper which is very similar in format, only this time the 4 questions that they answer are based on 2 non-fiction texts that they will be required to read and then answer 4 questions. And then in section B, again, they will do a piece of creative writing, but this time it's for a different purpose and in a different form, where they'll be writing to persuade or argue and explain on a given theme. And that theme will usually be connected to the theme of the 2 texts that they have read and analysed in section A. Now, we know this year, in fact, we've only just found out this week, that the type of text that they will be required to write in paper 2, section B, will be an article. So that's something we wouldn't usually find out. That's one of the adjustments that the exam board have made in order that our preparation time is slightly lessened, because we won't be then practicing things like letter writing skills, because we know we're going to be writing an article. So it's only a small bit of information, but nonetheless it is useful because it means that our preparation can be more focused. In addition to these 2 English language examination papers, there is also a spoken language element of the course. Now, in normal times, this would mean students prepared and delivered a 5-minute presentation to the class on a subject of their choice. That would also have to be recorded and sent to the exam board for review. Again, because of the current situation and the interruption to learning, this is no longer required to be presented in quite the same way. So students will be doing a spoken activity in class, but it will not be recorded. It won't be delivered in quite such a formal way. And so there's far less pressure in terms of preparation and delivery time. This will be awarded a pass, merit or distinction by the class teacher, and this is submitted to the exam board. there is absolutely no pressure. Students mustn't feel anxious or nervous about this spoken element. It will happen during a normal lesson with the class teacher present, with no recording happening. In the English literature qualification, again, you can see there are 2 papers, one on the 25th of May and one on the 8th of June. Paper 1 will see students answer 1 question on Lord of the Flies and 1 question on Jekyll and Hyde. They've already done a trial run on both of these, either in class or as part of the mock exam, so they know exactly what to expect. And then on paper 2, they will be answering a question on Romeo and Juliet and 2 questions on 2 unseen poems. So whilst they won't know what those poems are going to be, we will have done ample preparation for analysing unseen poetry. So it will be a case of students applying those analytical skills to the poems given. Now, what we don't have is any pre-studied GCSE poems, because we have been able to cut out the GCSE poetry anthology unit, which usually sits in the second paper for the English literature GCSE. But again, because of the COVID disruption, we've been able to drop an entire unit, which does take off a lot of pressure in terms of time and revision. So there is no requirement for our students to study any pre-seen poetry. So that is, in a nutshell, the examinations that will be sat and the 2 qualifications that will be received. Now, in terms of what can be revised, something we often hear is, I can't revise for English. I think students have this perception because, particularly for the English language papers, there is no way of knowing what the text that they study will be. However, it is the skills that they will be practicing. And of course, with English literature, they can revise because we know what the texts are going to be. We know what the characters are, what the themes are, what the settings are for each one of the texts that we study. So students need to be revisiting that material as much as they can at home. Now, there's a number of suggestions here as to what students can do. Most importantly, in my opinion, is to practice again the exam skills, either by using past papers or by asking teachers for questions that they can be doing and texts that they can be using. These will be being set by class teachers as homework anyway throughout the course of the revision programme. But if students are hungry for more to do in order to fill up their revision time at home, then I'm sure teachers are able to provide more. And there is a selection of past exam papers in the school library that students can go and help themselves to at any time. I would suggest that students are quizzing themselves on those key themes and ideas, creating flashcards, mind maps, memory walls to continue to write down and revisit important information. I would suggest that they're using online resources, particularly things like Mr. Brough, who is a teacher who makes YouTube videos, various online seminars that are short and sweet, sort of 5 to 10 minutes at a time that students can watch, selecting the different ones that they feel that they need to revise most readily. So those are available for English language and English literature topics, as well as content and exam technique. So there's lots of ways in which students can revise for English and for literature, so please don't let them tell you otherwise. Now, in support of that, there are numerous GCSE revision guides that can be purchased to support home revision. Whilst we don't endorse any in particular, I would say that my feeling is that the CGP study guides, these ones displayed on the screen, and the quotation bank ones are particularly good because they are user-friendly in terms of the layout, the volume of information on a page, and the suggested activities that students can do to support their revision. These are available for literature, as you can see, but there's also GCSE English language books available in the CGP series as well. And I think the prices of these are all very reasonable on Amazon or any other retailer for books. So they're the ones that we would recommend. Now, in addition to that, home revision that should be going on continuously between now and the exams in May, there are a number of things that we're doing to support students in school. If your son or daughter is involved in the intervention programme that has been running on a Wednesday morning during extended tutor time when PSHCE is happening, you will probably already be aware of this. It may be that they're involved for English, it may be that they're involved for maths. They're unlikely to, or they won't be involved in both at the same time because they run at the same time. If your son or daughter is involved in this, it's because they have been specifically targeted due to where their current level of achievement is and where we think it should be. If they are not currently attending, it is likely that they might be selected later on this term when we do a little review of the list of students involved. But if they're not attending this targeted intervention, it's probably because we feel that they don't need that additional focused extra lesson each week. However, what we are running for all students after school every Wednesday, starting from next week, are focused revision sessions on these various different topics that will be featured in the examination, and that we hope as many students as possible can attend. Some students may be invited. You may receive a text message or a letter saying we would like your son or daughter to be there. That is not to say that if you don't get an invite, they shouldn't be there. It just means that some students may need a little bit more encouragement than others, or that we feel that there are certain sessions that certain students should attend in order just to give them that little extra boost that they need. As I said, though, all students are welcome. And if they haven't got any kind of clash with other subjects, because of course they will have to prioritise, we would love to see them there. We've split these sessions so that they are targeted at particular grades that we think students should be achieving. So if it is a realistic target for your son or daughter to be achieving a grade 4 to 6 in English and English literature, we would suggest that they attend the sessions that are running in M26 on a Wednesday. If they're aiming for a grade 7 to 9 in English or literature, then they should be attending the sessions as directed into M18 or M14. It may be that students choose that they would attend some weeks and not others. For example, they may feel that Lord of the Flies is an area that they really need more revision on, whereas Romeo and Juliet is an area they feel absolutely confident and they don't wish to attend. So there is no compulsory attendance, but equally, we would love to see as many students there as possible. So do encourage that. So I'm hoping that that covers most of the things that you need to know. And if there's anything we haven't covered, I really would encourage you to feel free to contact your son or daughter's English teacher at any point between now and the final exams, as I'm sure that they would be happy to address any of your questions or give you any further resources or information that you need. Thanks very much.
Hi, my name's Dr. Burgess. I'm the Head of Maths here at Priestlands, and I'm just going to talk over the next few slides about how students can prepare for their maths exams. I wanted to start by talking about the advanced information that was released earlier this week. It's really helpful for us in maths because they've given us a topic breakdown paper by paper. This is broken down into specification order and looks like this, so it is not in the order that the questions will appear in the paper. You can see that each paper has its own information. So for example, this is the paper 1 for the foundation tier, and then it's broken down into topics, so number, algebra, ratio, stats and probability. It's quite long, so it's about 25 pages in total, but it is available to students on Show My Homework. What we're trying to do is create this Priestlands version of this that will have hyperlinks to MathsWatch. So that'll be really useful because it will just put all the information onto one page for students and make it a bit more manageable for them. But the hyperlinks will mean that they're able to go straight to relevant videos to help with their preparation and revision for their exam. The most important thing though is actually the topics that are not on the list. So there's some things that we would normally expect to appear that are not on that list, and therefore we no longer need to revise them or prepare for them going up to the exam. We will discuss this with students in class and make sure that they're aware of areas where they don't need to do any more preparation. Students have also been given a formula sheet. So this is the foundation one and this is the higher one. They have had a copy to use in class since it was released back in November, and they should be using that every lesson and making sure that they are practiced in accessing the formulas that are on there. Students will get a fresh copy when it comes to the exam, so they can write all over this one, that's not a problem. So what next? Well, students have received a QLA, a question level analysis, in their emails from their recent mocks, and that looks something like this. It shows students green topics, ones that they did really well on and therefore they should be confident with, amber topics, which they got a few of the marks for but they maybe need to do a little bit of revision, and red topics, areas that they really struggled with. So this should guide them in their own independent revision. And you can see that there's hyperlinks to MathsWatch as well. So if they click on them, it takes them straight to a relevant video and relevant questions that they can practice and secure that knowledge. Teachers are using both this and also the advanced information to create a plan on what we're going to revise in class. And they'll share that with students. It will come in 2 batches. They'll get one up until the March mocks, and then following on from the March mocks, they'll then get another countdown to their real exams. So the March mocks will use that advanced information that's just been released to us. They're going to be in the week beginning the 7th of March, and students will have 3 papers that reflect how the summer exams are, but will be shorter, so they'll only be 45 minutes each. We will release to students a cut down version of the advanced information for these mocks, hopefully at the start of next week. On Monday the 14th of February, they'll also now get a revision plan, and this will take the form of the homework like it did before Christmas. This will reflect both areas of weakness from the Christmas mocks, but also that advanced information. So we're making sure that we're only targeting any areas that are definitely going to be on the exams. It's important that students do 4 sessions a week for this, 15 minutes a night. That's the absolute minimum that they should be doing at this point, and it's that whole hour that we have for maths homework each week. Students who are aiming for really good progress between now and the summer should really make sure that they're doing a little bit more than that, and it's in those extra sessions that they can target their personal areas of weakness rather than maybe the general areas of weakness that our revision plan will hit. But the most important thing is that they start now if they haven't already. Students should be in the habit of doing this 4 sessions a week, but please encourage them and help them to create that area and that space. We're also going to provide an Easter booklet, which will give 1 session a day for every day of the Easter holidays to help them prepare. It's important that students keep going with their maths over the Easter holidays to keep it at the forefront of their mind, rather than almost taking 2 weeks of a step back before then they need to revise everything before their exams in May. Finally then, about intervention. So there are 3 intervention sessions now after school before the March mocks, and they're going to be Thursdays now after school. And as you can see, they're broken up into aiming for a 4, aiming for a 5, aiming for a 7, and aiming for an 8/9. And these topics are ones that are both on the advanced information list, but also areas of weakness from their QLA. Students can sign up to whichever session they would like. And on a Monday of each week, a fresh sign-up sheet will be in the stairwell of Robert Hull Building for them to sign up to that. We'll also have additional sessions on March the 31st and April the 7th, and then they'll be running every Thursday after school after Easter. Finally for me then, the exam dates. So our 3 exams are on the 20th of May, the 7th of June and the 13th of June. Paper 1 is the non-calculator paper, and then paper 2 and 3 are the calculator ones. If you do have any questions after this, then please do feel free to email me and I'll get back to you, or email your student's maths teacher and they'll also get back to you as well. Thank you so much.
So there are 2 science pathways, Trilogy, which is combined science, and triple science. They are both examined in fairly similar ways. So there's 6 exams listed there. The only difference is really the length of exams, 1 hour and 15 minutes for Trilogy and 1 hour and 45 minutes for the triple science. In terms of tiers of entry, again, we have 2 tiers of entry, foundation and higher. On the foundation paper, you can score grades 1 to 5, and the higher exams, you can score grades 4 to 9. A student that gets less than a grade 4 in the higher will actually be ungraded, and therefore it's a pretty important decision that we get students on the right paper. For borderline students, we tend to favour the foundation exam to begin with. However, it is a dialogue we have with the student and the parents to make sure we get this right. And often, if we got somebody just in between there, we'll get them to practice on the higher exam. And if they are proving their worth on it, then we'll obviously move them up to the higher exam. So if you want to have that conversation with us, then please contact your son or daughter's class teacher in the first instance. In terms of amendments to exams for 2022, one of the things we definitely knew early on is that students don't have to learn the physics equations. They're going to be provided with the physics equations. It's a double-sided document, so half of it is shown here. So that's obviously a good thing for students. And the other thing that we found out on Monday, the 7th of Feb, was the advance notice of the assessment points covered in each of the exams. Now, you can find this online, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because whilst it looks superficially simple, it's a little bit more complex than first sight. So if you have a look at an example here, this would be what is presented for the Biology 1 foundation paper. And there's 3 sections to it. It tells you in this red box, it tells you the major focus of that examination. It also tells you in the blue box what will be assessed from a practical point of view. It also tells you what won't be assessed. So all of that is useful. However, there are a lot of specification points which are not referenced at all. And those are things which could appear in what they call lower tariff questions. So it's important not just to think that if I study everything in the red box and the blue box, that will get you perfection, if you like. So we're going to approach this in a slightly different way. Our intention is present this to students is through an amended STB. The STBs are kind of their revision tools. So give us a week or two, certainly by after half term, we should have STBs available on Show My Homework, which will clearly signpost what will definitely be assessed, what might be assessed, and what definitely won't be assessed. Let's say we should have that ready for after half term. In terms of what students should be doing, what students should be self-testing 3 or 4 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes a time for their weekly recall test. So we try and prepare students by breaking down the revision and testing them once a week. And it's really important that students perform well in these. These will now be specifically designed, obviously, to what is definitely going to be covered in the exams and what might be covered in the exams. And the important point is actually not just cramming it the night before for these recall tests, is actually breaking it into small chunks and doing it 3 or 4 times a week. That's going to help students to retain the knowledge for a lot longer. So you can do that. That would be good. And in terms of what parents can do, well, parents can really support by verbally quizzing their son or their daughter once or twice a week, or more if it works for your son or daughter. But that verbal quizzing is a very, very quick process, and it allows students really to make sure they succeed at the end. So that's it for science. To all the students out there, good luck.